Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Once you see Natasha Howard's name, you already know. Us Fever fans, us Caitlin Clark fans, we kind of go into panic right away. We had a traumatic experience with Natasha Howard this season. So when I saw this headline with Natasha Howard receiving help from Caitlin Clark and all of this stuff, boy.
Okay, remember that gut feeling, that total panic when Indiana Fever fans saw Natasha Howard's name trending with Caitlin Clark's? Yeah, we all felt that. Last season, that whole experiment, it left some real scars. And now, we're all wondering if they're going to try to run it back for another year. Look, nobody's saying Natasha Howard isn't a good player. The real question is she the right player to put next to Caitlin Clark, who is honestly the best passer in WNBA history? And if you dig into the numbers, they tell a story that front offices really don't want you to look at too closely.
So, Natasha Howard played this past season with the Indiana Fever. Ups and downs in the season. A lot of ups and downs, more downs in my opinion. I was not a fan of the style that Natasha Howard played with while being Caitlin Clark's teammate. I feel like she was trying to do too much. And we should have known when she came and was talking about winning MVP. We should have known right then and there, whoa, this ain't gonna work. We ignored that, and that falls on us. That's on us right there.
Remember how we all just kind of ignored it? Like, oh, she's trying to do too much, or she's talking about winning MVP? Those weren't just random comments. That's actually the whole problem, right there in 2 quick phrases. When you bring in a veteran forward to play with a generational point guard like Caitlin, that veteran's job is super clear. You space the floor, you finish at the rim, you set screens, and you play defense. Your job is not to become the main scoring option, or to dribble the ball up the court on the break. But that's exactly what ended up happening all season long. And what's more, it created a whole chain reaction of issues that the Fever just never figured out how to fix.
So here in an article, marca.com, it says, Natasha Howard gets help from Caitlin Clark while staying connected to basketball at every level. All right, here it says, Natasha Howard carried a heavy load for the Indiana Fever throughout their punishing 2025 campaign. You know what's crazy? Natasha Howard was one of the few people that actually stay healthy throughout the whole season, and she's like older than everybody. She was older than everybody, except for maybe DeWanna Bonner at the time, who scammed us.
So here's the whole thing that got everyone buzzing. Natasha Howard visited a high school basketball program in Mississippi, right? And get this, she surprised the team with Caitlin Clark's signature Kobe 5 Proto sneakers, which, by the way, retail for like the locker room video went totally viral, and Howard shared it proudly. Suddenly, we're all asking the same question: does this mean she's coming back to Indiana? But before we jump to conclusions, let's actually talk about what happened with those sneakers. This wasn't just Natasha Howard being super generous with her own cash. According to an article from Marca, Caitlin Clark's brand partnership actually helped make this donation happen. So yes, there's still some connection, some working relationship between them. But a charitable gesture in February, that doesn't tell us anything about roster decisions in March.
Here we go, y'all. She enters free agency without a clear direction on whether she will return to the Fever, join a new franchise, or even continue her WNBA career. Here it says, free agency, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm not trying to think about that right now. I'm going to dissect everything from this season. When that time comes, you guys will know, she said as the season wrapped up. You remember her exit interview? Natasha Howard did not sound like she was looking to come back to Indiana after everything was all said and done. And I was actually happy about that. Like, I just don't think Natasha Howard's a good fit. I don't think she's a bad person or nothing like that. I just don't think her game.
Free agency. That's where things get really complicated. Honestly, Natasha Howard is hitting unrestricted free agency, and she has no clear direction. In her exit interview after the 2024 season, she literally said, "I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm not trying to think about that right now. I'm going to dissect everything from this season." That doesn't sound like someone planning to just run it back, does it? That sounds like someone who knows the fit wasn't right. Someone who felt that frustration themselves and who's genuinely unsure if coming back to Indiana is the best move for her career. And here's what's truly fascinating. Both sides might actually be better off moving on, but neither wants to be the one to say it out loud. So let's talk about what actually happened on the court last season, because this is where all the theory hits reality. Natasha Howard averaged 11 points and 6 rebounds per game. Those are perfectly respectable numbers for a veteran forward, for sure. But those raw averages, they don't tell you anything about her shot selection, or the spacing, or how her presence actually affected everyone else's efficiency.
So there you have that. And then let's just kind of take a look at her numbers. I mean, Natasha Howard, she averaged 11 points, 6 rebounds. I just feel like we can get so much better, man. I feel like we can do a lot better at the 4 spot. I think we should go all in and go get Azurá Stevens from the Sparks. I think if you're looking for a true stretch 4 that has height, we're talking about a girl that's 6'6", can shoot the 3. I think that would be a great fit next to Caitlin Clark. I don't think DeWanna Bonner or Natasha Howard was ever a good fit. I mean, really think about like Aaliyah Boston being a hub. Part of the reason Aaliyah Boston was a hub is because her and Natasha Howard can't.
18% from 3-point range. Seriously, let me just say that again, because it's that important. Natasha Howard shot a dismal 18% from beyond the arc during the entire 2024 WNBA season. That's not some weird anomaly, and it's not just bad luck. That's a fundamental limitation, and defenses just exploited it relentlessly. When you're playing next to Caitlin Clark, the absolute most crucial thing for a power forward is the ability to make defenses pay when they help off you. Caitlin's whole offensive system is built on creating those advantages because of her gravity. Defenders have to respect her deep range, which means they're constantly making choices to help. If your power forward can't hit those open shots, if they can't punish those decisions, the entire offensive ecosystem just completely breaks down. And that's exactly what happened. Defenses quickly figured out they could just sag off Natasha Howard entirely. They could pack the paint against Aaliyah Boston. They could send aggressive help at Caitlin Clark on every single pick and roll. Because what's the absolute worst that happens? Natasha Howard gets an open 3-pointer that she's going to miss 4 out of 5 times. But honestly, the spacing issue wasn't even the biggest problem. The absolute biggest problem was her shot selection and her decision-making. Natasha Howard repeatedly tried to create her own offense off the dribble. She'd bring the ball up in transition, even when Caitlin Clark was on the floor. She'd call for isolations in the post, or wave off screens to go one-on-one. For a player who shot 18% from 3 and wasn't particularly efficient inside either, honestly, these decisions were just baffling.
You guys went and got Natasha Howard when there were other options at the 4 spot. We went and got a 4 that shoots 18% from 3. It just didn't make sense. It made no sense, and this is just why we feel like we can't really trust this organization to get it right and get the right pieces around Caitlin Clark. Now, I'm going to be completely honest with you. If there's any way that Natasha Howard is planning to come back,
honestly, I'd call that malpractice on all levels. I know that's really harsh language, but is it actually inaccurate? The Indiana Fever front office had an entire offseason to build this roster around Caitlin Clark. They knew exactly what they were getting: the most accomplished college player ever, a generational passer, someone who would demand defensive attention like nothing this franchise had ever seen. And their response? They signed a power forward who simply cannot shoot. This wasn't some mid-season injury replacement. This wasn't a desperate move after other options fell through. Natasha Howard was a deliberate choice. She was a planned acquisition, a player the front office specifically targeted to fill that starting power forward role. Now, that really raises some uncomfortable questions about whether the people making these roster decisions actually understand how to maximize Caitlin Clark's unique skill set. Think about how other franchises build around elite point guards. When you have someone who can create open looks for teammates at historic rates, you surround them with shooters. You prioritize floor spacing above almost everything else. You even accept some defensive limitations at certain positions if it means keeping that offensive system humming. But the Fever did the exact opposite. They prioritized veteran presence and defensive versatility, and then acted all surprised when the offense just completely stagnated in crucial moments.
I'm going to be pissed. Now, we saw here, and I had already put out a video that Caitlin Clark is back to 100%. So she's going to be looking to do damage this year. She's 100%, no injuries, none of that. She's going to be looking to do damage. We need to get the right people around her. I don't want to see under no circumstances should Natasha Howard be on this roster next season. It's no excuse for it. We don't have time for it. Natasha Howard needs to go on to another team and do her thing. Maybe go join an expansion team. I don't know.
Okay, and here's where things get a bit personal. Natasha Howard was actually one of the few players who stayed healthy through the entire 2024 season. At 33 years old, playing big minutes, taking all that contact in the paint, that remarkable durability, that's genuinely impressive, and we shouldn't dismiss it. In a season where the Fever were battling so many injuries that totally derailed their roster, having a veteran forward available every single night had real value. But here's the thing, durability without real production is just empty minutes. And production without the right fit is just individual stats that don't translate to team success. The Fever needed someone who could stay on the court and make Caitlin Clark better. Instead, they got someone who stayed on the court but often made Caitlin Clark's job much, much harder. Think about what Aaliyah Boston went through this season. She's a legitimate post presence, someone who should be catching lobs and finishing efficiently around the rim. But she spent large portions of games just standing out at the three-point line because Natasha Howard was clogging the paint. Boston's usage rate dropped and her efficiency suffered, and a huge part of that was the roster construction, forcing her into a role that just didn't maximize her strengths. So, let's talk about what the Fever absolutely should do this offseason. Because this isn't just about whether Natasha Howard returns, it's about whether the front office learned anything from the 2024 experiment. The name that everyone keeps bringing up in these discussions is Ezra Stevens from the Los Angeles Sparks. She's 6'6", can shoot the three ball, can protect the rim, and can switch defensively. That's exactly the kind of modern stretch forward who unlocks everything Caitlin Clark does offensively. Stevens shot 37% from three in the 2023 season before injuries limited her last year. That's the profile you want. Size, shooting, defensive versatility. Now, acquiring Stevens won't be easy, obviously. She's under contract with the Sparks, so any trade would require giving up assets. Probably draft picks, maybe even young players. But this is where the Fever front office needs to ask themselves a fundamental question. Are we building to compete for championships, or are we just building to be respectable? Because respectable doesn't require bold moves. Championships do. Caitlin Clark just announced she's back to 100% health. No lingering injuries from that physical rookie season. No off-season procedures needed. She's heading into year 2 with a full training camp, complete familiarity with WNBA defenses, and the kind of motivation that comes from falling short in the playoffs. This is the window, folks. This is when you go all in on surrounding her with the right pieces. And right pieces doesn't mean the most accomplished resumes or the biggest names. It means players whose skills perfectly complement hers. It means shooters who can punish those help defenses. It means bigs who can finish lobs and set bone-crushing screens. It means guards who can defend at a high level, so Clark doesn't have to carry that burden all by herself. It means a power forward who truly understands that an open three is way more valuable than a contested mid-range jumper. Look, Natasha Howard is a 3-time WNBA champion. She's played on great teams, contributed to winning cultures, and earned respect throughout the league. None of that is in question. But championships aren't won by just assembling a collection of individually accomplished players. They're won by constructing rosters where every piece fits together, where strengths are maximized and weaknesses are hidden. The Fever tried to make this work for an entire season. They gave it a legitimate chance. And the results? Well, they speak for themselves. An 18% three-point shooter, taking up a starting spot next to a point guard who creates open threes at historic rates. That's not a fit. That's not even close to a fit. And running that back for another year, that would be organizational malpractice. Plus, here's what makes this whole situation particularly awkward. Natasha Howard hasn't done anything wrong from a professionalism standpoint. She showed up every game, played hard, and was durable. If she returns to Indiana, it won't be because she forced her way back or caused drama. It'll be because the front office failed to make a difficult decision. And that's what this really comes down to. Does the Indiana Fever front office have the courage to admit that the Natasha Howard experiment just didn't work? Can they make the tough call to move on from a respected veteran, even if it means some uncomfortable conversations? Are they willing to prioritize pure fit over reputation? Because Caitlin Clark's window won't stay open forever. She's under contract through the 2028 season, which sounds like a long time until you remember how quickly WNBA careers can shift. Injuries happen, team dynamics change, windows close much faster than anyone expects. The time to maximize this incredible opportunity is right now, in year 2, when Clark is healthy, motivated, and ready to take that next big step. Meanwhile, Natasha Howard is getting her jersey retired by Florida State University, which is a tremendous honor and truly well-deserved recognition for everything she accomplished there. That's exactly the kind of legacy moment that can help frame a transition. She could move on to an expansion team like Toronto, where she'd have a bigger role and more freedom to truly play her game. She could join a contender that needs veteran depth. She has options that make perfect sense for her career. And the Fever? They can pursue the kind of forward who actually fits their system. Someone who makes Aaliyah Boston better, not worse. Someone who makes Caitlin Clark's passes more dangerous, not less effective. Someone who understands that the absolute best shot in basketball is an open three-pointer, created by a generational playmaker. So when you see Natasha Howard's name connected to Caitlin Clark in the headlines, don't panic. Understand that a charitable gesture in February doesn't dictate roster decisions in March. Appreciate that both players can be good people who simply don't fit together on a basketball court. And demand that your front office makes decisions based on winning championships, not on avoiding difficult conversations. The Indiana Fever have a generational talent. They have a player who can change the entire trajectory of the franchise, but only if they surround her with the right pieces. Only if they prioritize fit over everything else. Only if they truly learn from the mistakes of 2024 and absolutely refuse to repeat them in 2025. Under no circumstances should Natasha Howard be back on this roster next season. Not because she's a bad player, and not because she's a bad person, but because the fit just doesn't work. The numbers prove it doesn't work, and wasting another year of Caitlin Clark's prime would be simply unforgivable. The Fever need to move on. Natasha Howard needs to move on. And honestly, both sides will be better for it. So get down in the comments and tell me, would you bring Natasha Howard back? Or is it time for the Fever to find a true stretch four who can actually space the floor? Because this decision is going to define whether Indiana is serious about competing for championships, or just content with being competitive. And let me tell you, there's a massive difference between those two things.